Can you explain to me why do we use water in data centers, period? Can we start with there?
Yeah, great question. So water is actually used in all data centers, AI or not. The reason why AI is kind of uniquely problematic here is because AI chips themselves require so much more power than normal CPUs that we would have for some server that just does some web stuff. I think it's 10 to 20 times as much power per unit density. So when you're designing a data center, you think of things in terms of racks,
Yeah.
which are these like physical things.
Yeah.
And these things require a ton of power. So again, like
Yeah.
for one of these server racks, it's basically 10 times as much power for AI chips than it was for the old ones. So all that power has to go somewhere once it's done with the chip, and that gets expanded as heat, basically. So it's like these chips give off way more heat, but they still have to operate at the same temperatures that regular chips do.
Do you know how hot these things actually get? Let me look this up because
This is a
when,
big
when I'm
thing.
on when I'm like building a model,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you're logging out statistics about the model. Usually, you can actually see how hot the chip is.
It's true. WMB graphs that directly, right?
They graph that directly. Yeah. So for our European folks, this is going to make more sense. Chips operate at like around 70 to 80 degrees Celsius, which is hot, which is very hot.
That is hot.
So 70, 80 degrees Celsius is around like 170, 180 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a sauna, dude. That's like it's a cold
Is that
sauna.
true?
It's like a cold-ish sauna, but if you basically could shrink down to the size of like an atom and like hop onto one of these GPU chips at 70 degrees Celsius,
I could tolerate that.
for 20 minutes you could,
Is
you
there
could
a cold
survive.
plunge
But
available?
there's no cold plunge on the GPU chip.
Brutal.
But just like to put that in perspective, I mean, you're basically trying to cool something that is at the temperature of a sauna, or you're trying to cool it down to at least that, because otherwise it would keep getting hotter and hotter.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
exactly. And that's the problem. So you kind of want to like keep it at the healthy sauna level.
Yeah.
You don't want to get it to be like a furnace. And so there are three ways that you end up doing the heat exchange that's required to cool it down, right? One is like air cooling.
Air conditioning.
Effectively, it's basically just air
You
conditioning.
just blow cold air at it. Just blow normal air, room temperature
You
air.
blow, yeah, and then there's some like heat exchange process
Okay.
which like extracts the heat
Sure.
from the cold, basically. Method number two is this evaporative cooling. So you basically just like blow air past the chips. It collects all this heat as part of the air. And then you basically splatter that across just like a grid of water. And then some of that evaporates as water vapor. And that's basically what happens with us when we sweat, right?
Oh, I guess so.
Literally, the thermodynamics are the same.
That's why you feel cold, right? When there's like when you've just sweated.
Yeah.
You have like sweat piling up on your skin,
Mm-hmm.
and then a cold or like a breeze comes by and wicks that away.
Yeah.
That makes you feel cold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it has
Extracted
captured so much of that
It has
heat.
extracted the heat
And then
away
when
from
it
you.
leaves, you no longer have the heat. So that's exactly what these cooling towers are basically
Okay.
doing behind the scenes.
So they're
trying
sweating.
to
They're
get-
sweating the GPUs.
They're sweating the GPUs.
Okay.
That's exactly right. So, that water vapor leaves, still stays in like the general like ecosystem.
Yeah.
But it's no longer in the water table.
Sure.
Right. And then the third method are like closed loop cooling systems, which rely on like
Is this where you-
liquid coolant.
Yeah. Is this where you dunk the chip
Yeah.
in the water?
You dump it in chemicals that are non-conductive, basically.
Yeah.
And like, I guess water in the extreme is like not conductive, but you use other things. You don't use
Okay.
water for this.
There's special liquids. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Where if you did dunk your computer in this,
Totally.
because the liquid isn't conductive, it doesn't like fry anything in the computer.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is very unintuitive.
Yeah. Totally.
Like you would not expect that to be true. You can extract the heat that way.
Yeah.
And it stays closed in loop. So water is not an issue, but it's much more energy intensive
Okay.
because
Why?
it just requires electricity, basically like do some later heat exchange process that then takes the heat and dumps it somewhere else. Because if you just let coolant sit and like the chips are getting hotter, the energy stays in the coolant's going to like heat up.
Oh, so you gotta move. The
You need to
coolant.
eventually
You
get
need
the
some
heat
pipes. You gotta get
somewhere
that.
else.
Sure.
You need to
Gotcha.
like evaporate it, put it out in the ecosystem,
Okay.
or you need to like dump it somewhere else.
Okay.
So the case of the water is what people are the most concerned about, and that's also the most common way. It's like the easiest to actually build.
This is way
these
number
cooling
2.
towers. This is way number 2.
Right.
This is why people are concerned about the water
Interesting.
usage.
And how does so my mental model is like when there's a chemical plant or like a manufacturing plant, that water that the chemical plant uses gets contaminated with bad chemicals somehow. And then it's bad if you then dump that back out into rivers and stuff, right? Because you're going to contaminate the rivers. It's bad for the local like ecology. is this the same thing? I mean, are they dumping chemicals into this water? Does that water get contaminated? Because right now it sounds like the chips are sweating, but that
Yeah.
water doesn't feel like it's contaminated.
Yeah, it seems like it's just pure water. So
Yeah.
the issue with the water, it's yes and no.
Okay.
One is you do end up putting some chemicals in some of the water because you don't want to have microbes
Oh,
growing
I
in this
see.
water as it's
Gotcha.
going through this closed loop unit. You can also do that by just making sure that the water is very pure when it comes in. So you don't necessarily need to add chemicals just as part of this process.
But then you're taking drinking water, I guess, away from the system.
Yeah. So the issue is you're taking drinking water like from the water table and then you're
Yeah.
applying it to this. Or you need to then use more energy to make that water purer, right? Like you could do some reverse osmosis thing, but
I
that
see.
takes energy.
I see.
So you eventually get in this tower. But the issue, even if you do that, is that most water that's not like ultra hyper pure is it has some dissolved minerals in it. And those minerals, the more that you evaporate the water vapor, the proportion of the overall water is decreasing. Mineral content is staying fixed.
So you got like
So you're
descale
getting, like-
it somehow.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting like much more minerally water the more times you loop this.
And that's when you have to put in chemicals to dissolve it, and then those chemicals go into the
think
water system.
Mostly you just vent the water.
I see.
So this water is like super mineral buildup, and eventually you say, "Hey, quantity of minerals is just too
Sure.
high," so you just release that into a river
Gotcha.
or like outside.
Okay.
I don't know how they
See.
pipe this. So that's known as this like brine.
Yeah.
Offset as part of this process,
Oh.
which I think is what AOC probably held up when she was talking about
That's
data centers
brine. I see.
contaminating.
Okay.
That was like this runoff brine. It was like super like
Mineral
dirty
dense,
looking.
dirty
Yeah.
water. Okay. Gotcha.
Doesn't look good.
Right.
Its temperature is also slightly a problem sometimes, depending on your water store, because if you just put this hot water effectively like back into a stream, then there also might be some like ecological.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
for the most part, I think of it as like you're releasing way less water. It's basically like 20% ends up getting released back in like the water table, and it's like very high mineral content. So effectively, all of the water that is used as part of this evaporative cooling is lost in some way, shape, or form. Like it's no
I see.
longer suitable for
Right.
civilian purposes.
Right. So now that we understand the role of water in, I suppose, cooling primarily for these data centers, like how do we quantify how much water is being used per token or per prompt that
Mm.
you feed into one of these language models?
Yes, totally. So like this is what I was saying in like
Yeah.
the top of the segment. So there are kind of three ways. So like most conservative is to say it's literally just the water in that data center amortized for whatever your prompt response is, right? That's kind of the simplest or like the lowest level of water.
Right.
And that number is usually like a fifth of a teaspoon.
Per token?
No, just like per response.
Per
Or like
response.
average
I see. Okay.
medium response. Now that doesn't account for agents just churning in the background, but that's like input, output. What is an average response that it gives you back? It's usually like a fifth of a teaspoon.
It's like a splash of water.
Even less than that. That's like a water drop that is so small that if you put it on a pan and you were like heating it up, it evaporates immediately. The other way to look at it though is to say, well, we actually can't have GPUs at all unless we have power powering the GPUs. So let's also include the water utilization that's used in the power plants. In turbine based, which is like most power generation, especially with natural gas, you basically
You
Heat
heat up
things up,
water, I guess.
heat
Yeah.
up water and then that water turns a
Make
turbine.
something spin.
Same with
Yeah.
actually nuclear power, incidentally, is like
Yeah, it's like you
heating
just get
things.
water hot and
That's
then
right.
that makes things spin, I guess.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like
Huh.
that actually is how most energy is produced. Actually, it's just
Just
via,
steam.
via turbines, like
Yeah.
steams and turbines. I don't know how much they're losing as part of that process independently, because that kind of is a closed loop with the steam. But like there are other things they need to cool down and yada yada yada. So like power plants will use some level of water on top of it. And then the third way to account for it is to say, well, that all is true, and we wouldn't have an AI model that you would be chatting with unless we trained one in the first
Sure.
place. So
And
let's
then
also amortize all
that
of
as
the
well.
training costs
Yeah.
over this inference. And that's how you end up with some of these larger numbers.
I mean, which one do you buy?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say. I think once it's trained, I believe more in like that second kind of middle tier of saying, let's account for both the power plant and the GPU cooling, because that importantly is within one municipality. Like I think, and maybe we can cover this in a second, but like why this water conversation is difficult is not because the world does not have enough water to deal with data centers. It's that the places where they're building the data centers those water tables are usually some of the more tapped in the country. And therefore, there's less water to use as part of these processes, right? So, like, I think you kind of have to couple the like at serve time usage of like all of the things end to end. And that is both power as well as evaporative cooling. The training, in my mind, it's like, if we wanted to stop training these models today and really amortize the cost over years and years and years, the training cost would be de minimis in the overall scheme of things. You know what I mean? So it's a little hard to say, but I do think that the second is a better way to account for it, because in the abstract, you could, train in like very advantageous regions and then just deploy them to the edge in all these data centers.
The issue is
I think
that
it's a
you have some
slightly more-
counties where this is like
Totally.
10 or 20% of the water consumption.
Yeah.
Is just going to this power plant.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though globally it's maybe like 0.1%, what we really care about is the folks in, Newton County, Georgia, whatever, right?
And I think that's the objection where a lot of the AI defenders kind of like glaze over the details, where they're like, dude, look, like, golf courses take so much more water than data centers, which is true. Golf courses use 500 billion gallons a year, and data centers consume 17. So it's like an order of magnitude more for golf courses. Number one, golf courses are just so wasteful. So you're comparing something
that's
that
not
is
an argument.
super
Like, you
wasteful. And you're like,
shouldn't-
"Oh, well, we could be more wasteful."
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's a terrible argument.
Yeah.
But the other part of it too is exactly, it's like nationwide, these are the counts. It's not like in Arizona,
Well, to be fair, they have a
Super
lot of
dry.
golf courses that just shouldn't exist.
That is
in the
also
middle of the desert.
like in Arizona.
Like in
Or
Arizona.
Palm Springs.
Right, exactly.
It's actually, dare I say, where there are the most golf courses.
Yeah,
Because you
I
can
think
play
you
year-round.
might say that, dude.
But the issue is we so drastically subsidize companies and data center operators to move into these regions that are often the most parched.
Yeah, I wonder, do you know why that is?
I think it just overlaps with the places that usually don't have as much economic activity. I think there's 30 some states that have laws on the books where you don't have to pay sales tax if you're buying something that's associated with a data center.
Interesting.
So like the big costs for a data center.
You don't have to pay sales tax on
Yeah.
anything associated with the data center.
That's right. You buy GPUs, you buy construction materials, you buy power, all of that, 0% sales tax in most of these states.
Huh.
As an incentive to spur investment and get more data centers. So like the laws on the books that people talk about that are so problematic, Texas, for instance, says that if you invest at least 200 million over 5 years and create 20 jobs, only 20 jobs in a data center, then you get a 10 to 15 year sales tax abatement.
10 to 15
Yeah.
years. Wow.
Last year, they handed data centers over $1 billion in tax breaks
Wow.
to data centers. Arizona, which is like the poster child of being hot and dry and like not having much water, they have a sales tax exemption for qualifying data centers investing at least 50 million. I think it's per year. Georgia has an exception on equipment for 100 million to 250 million. It scales with country population. So like they have all of these tax breaks and even more coming on the line that encourage people to move these places that like don't have that much water.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, this isn't a political show, but I would be really interested to figure out where these exemptions originally came from, because part of me is like, maybe these are from a time where we just didn't see how data centers were going to scale, right? Maybe.
Well, I think that's fully correct.
But what is, I guess, like the economic arguments for this, right? Someone at some point made some economic model where they said, okay, well, this is going to bring this many jobs because data centers provide this benefit to our society.
Yeah. It is pretty crazy that the qualification of investing 200 million, which let's be clear, it's investing 200 million in computers.
Yeah.
It's not like in the local economy. I guess building it maybe, but like
and that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like it feels like at some point someone made an argument that was like, if you buy 200 million computer, folks in this county make at least over
Totally.
200 million in profit or
Yeah.
benefit somehow else.
which
That's gonna-
self-evidently seems absurd, right?
Yeah, and so like just introspecting, like, well, where did this come from? You know,
Totally.
I'd be really curious to even like learn about that.